Hello, my name is NPonomarev, and today I will talk to you about my project which deals with the applications of genetic algorithms to component-based software engineering. The objective of the project was to conduct a literature review with a view of identifying gaps in the current research. One of those gaps was identified as the application of multi-objective genetic algorithms to component-based software engineering. These algorithms are very suitable for certain tasks where a single objective may be broken down into a component objectives. However, when the objectives that we are trying to optimize are conflicting, the multi-objective genetic algorithms might not perform as well as hoped for. The second stage of the project was to create a possible solution to address the identified gap. The solution proposed is to combine three variations of genetic algorithms into a single solution, which would hopefully outperform a single multi-objective genetic algorithm. The third stage of the project is to test the proposed solution via an experiment where I wrote 4 versions of genetic algorithms, 3 for the experiment and 1 to serve as a control. Before I proceed any further, I'd like to present some background material on component-based software engineering and genetic algorithms. Component-based software engineering involves combining software modules into a final software product. Now, there can be many interactions between software modules, as well as there can be many software modules in a software repository, which can make the tasks of selecting the right software modules quite complex. In fact, the problem has a complexity of an NP-complete problem. The two most common approaches are the selection of the components by human experts or the selection of components by meta-heuristic search algorithms. These algorithms search through a software repository to select the best software modules fit to form the final software solution. There are many examples of these algorithms, such as greedy hill climbers, genetic algorithms, genetic programming, and others. These algorithms do not produce the exact solution. However, they can produce optimal solutions, which are often good enough for the task at hand and even better than the solutions produced by human experts alone. Genetic algorithms are heuristic search algorithms which have been applied to component-based software development. The advantages of these algorithms are in that they're able to rapidly explore a solution space, generating a large number of possible solutions, which can then be sifted through by human experts to select the best ones. In fact, genetic algorithms have been shown to produce solutions of better qualities than human experts alone. There are many variations of genetic algorithms which have been applied to component-based software development. For example, there are adaptive genetic algorithms which adapt their parameters based on the evolution of the algorithm. The multi-objective genetic algorithms which can optimize multiple objectives simultaneously, and there are also combined methods which can use more than one search algorithm to find the best solutions. For example, a greedy hill climber can be used to initially explore the solution space, followed by the application of a genetic algorithm which can focus in on the promising areas of the solution space. There are two metrics which are commonly used for genetic algorithms when applied to component-based software development. The first is coupling, and it refers to the dependencies between the modules. Ideally, we would like low coupling. The second one is cohesion, and it refers to the relatedness of the functions within a module. Ideally, we would like to have high cohesion, as we would like to have all of the functions of the module to be interrelated between each other. Now that I have presented a brief background on component-based software engineering and genetic algorithms, I would like to talk about the gap that I have identified in the literature. The gap is concerning the multi-objective genetic algorithms. The advantage of these algorithms is in that they can subdivide a single objective into component objectives and then optimize each one of the component objectives, thereby producing a superior solution. However, the multi-objective genetic algorithms do not always perform optimally when faced with optimizing conflicting objectives. To the best of my knowledge, this disadvantage of multi-objective genetic algorithms has not been explored. The solution that I propose to address the shortcomings of multi-objective genetic algorithms is combined of three genetic algorithms which are to be executed in sequence. The first genetic algorithm, called GA2, is to optimize the first objective. The second genetic algorithm, called GA3, is to optimize a second conflicting objective. The output of the two objectives is to be fed into the third genetic algorithm, called GA4 in this diagram. GA4 will subsequently optimize the population of solutions which are fed to it with respect to objective 1 and objective 2 simultaneously. The aim of this experiment is to obtain a solution which is superior to the application of multi-objective genetic algorithm alone. The results obtained from the experiment are to be compared to the control. The control is a single multi-objective genetic algorithm which is seeking to optimize objective 1 and objective 2 simultaneously. It is important to remember that objective 1 is conflicting with objective 2, which in theory can result in GA1 performing suboptimally. In order to make the project feasible within the time frame that was established, I decided to create my own data set, which would actually simulate components in component-based software engineering. I used pre-existing IBM SPSS modular streams, which are basically queries and data manipulations, to create my components. On the slide, you see a simple IBM SPSS modular stream, which extracts data from a database, selects data based on a certain criteria, filters some fields out, and passes on the data to an analysis node. Now I have separated pre-existing IBM SPSS modular streams into individual nodes, further marked each node as a data source node or a data operation node, and created metadata for each of the nodes. In total, I had 98 nodes and 98 metadata files. These metadata files were then fed as input to the genetic algorithms to create the desired output and find the nodes which should form the optimal solution. Before I explain the specifics of the genetic algorithms used in the experiment, I would like to return back to genetic algorithms and discuss the basics. At the core of the genetic algorithm lies the solution population. This is a population of solutions which is to be optimized into the final optimal set of solutions. The optimization occurs at each iteration of the algorithm via the application of the crossover and the mutation operations. At each iteration, there is a probability of each solution being subject to crossover and mutation. As new offsprings are created via the crossover and the mutation operation, only the fittest population solutions go on to the next stages of the iteration. Coming back to the experiment, the parameters that were used are as follows: population of 100, crossover probability of 0.6, and the probability of mutation at each iteration of 0.1. Now, it is recommended in the literature that a population of 100, a crossover rate of 0.6, and the mutation of 0.001 are optimal for many optimization problems where the parameters are kept static. However, for the purposes of this experiment, I have decided to increase the probability of mutations in order to increase the probability of deletions. One of my objectives is to get a solution with as few nodes as possible. Mutations either remove a node from the solution and replace it with a random node, or delete a node from the solution. Therefore, I would like to have a higher probability of mutations, higher probability of deletions, and smaller solutions. As mentioned earlier, my objective for this experiment was to find the optimal solutions with respect to two objectives. Objective number one was to select solutions with as few components as possible, namely as few SPSS modular nodes as possible. The second objective is to find solutions where the fields coming from the source nodes are well matched with the fields which are required by the data manipulation nodes, and the fields which are coming out of the data manipulation nodes are well matched with the fields which are required by the final solution. A second parameter which ended up being optimized is the validity of the solutions. The initial population of solutions was not necessarily valid, as the solutions did not necessarily produce the required fields. This was because it was too laborious to create a valid population of solutions for each run of the experiment manually. Therefore, random solutions were created and then optimized to create valid solutions. Now, I have considered solutions as valid if they produced 75% of the required fields. The results obtained during the experiment are presented in the following table. As you can see, there were 3 runs of the experiment. The first run had 10,000 iterations, the second run had 20,000 iterations, and the third run had 40,000 iterations. Following each run, the best solution was selected from the control and the experiment. The best solution was based on the score, which is the fitness of the solution with respect to the 2 objectives which were to be optimized, with the criteria that the solution had to have a validity of 0.75 or higher. As you can see, the control has outperformed the experiment on average. The control has performed better in 2 of the 3 runs, marked in red. The experiment has performed better in run number 3, which is marked in blue. This is not indicative that the experimental setup cannot produce better results than the control. There are a number of limitations with how the experiment was conducted. Some of them arise in part due to the time constraints on the project. These limitations will be addressed in the next few slides. The first limitation is that I have decided to go with static parameters instead of dynamic parameters. If you remember, dynamic parameters allow the mutation rate and the crossover rate to adjust as the algorithm evolves. Based on the results of the experiment and the control, we can say that the solution does not seem to be converging after a certain point. Experimental run number 1 produced results similar in fitness to experimental result number 3. The difference is that experimental run number 1 had 10,000 iterations versus experimental run number 3, which had 40,000 iterations. This could be because the static parameters chosen for the experiment do not allow the genetic algorithms to converge. One possible solution could be to reduce the mutation rate as the algorithm progresses. This would allow the algorithm to start converging. Another limitation of the experimental setup is in that the initial population did not consist of valid solutions. Now, it is recommended and is typical for the initial population to be composed of valid but unoptimized solutions. It is also important to note that the control and the experiment did not have the same number of iterations to optimize the solutions with respect to the two objectives. The results of running the experiment for 10, 20, or 40,000 iterations may be different than the results of conducting the experiment until each algorithm reaches a certain fitness value, regardless of how many iterations have passed. In this case, the experiment may very well obtain higher fitness solutions than the control. In conclusion, I would like to summarize that the results of the experiment are not conclusive. There are many limitations under which this experiment was conducted. These limitations stem primarily from the time constraints on the project. It would be beneficial to repeat the experiment with valid initial populations, adaptive mutation and crossover rates, as well as adjusting those rates to the specifics of this experiment. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. Thank you.